Hello, my name is Nathaniel James Bittner Tricko, and this is my project on Charlemagne. I did have a screen recording application, but it did not work. So we're going to do it like this. I don't know, for some reason today, just decided to have a time limit on it. But anyways, first slide, we have the Frankish Empire. So first off, the Franks can be called Francia. They called themselves Francia, which is where modern-day France got its name. They originated on the east bank of a lower Rhine River, which runs along France, central France, and partly through southern Germany. They were originated in the 3rd century Common Era. They first started out as the Merovingian dynasty, which was headed by Clovis, the ruler, established a strong monarchy with the Franks. He pushed Frankish presence along eastern Rhine River and established Catholicism for the first time in the empire, taking away paganism. After his death, his 4 sons took over, and they had often land disputes, which caused division and the creation of sub-kingdoms Austrasia, Neustria, and Burgundy. Eventually, long after that, Clothar II took over, but unfortunately turnover caused the Lazy King era, which was finally deposed of by Pope Zachary, who basically got rid of the Merovingian dynasty in 752, making the Carolingian dynasty, or Carolingian dynasty, who was headed by Pippin II, succeeded by Pippin III, Charles Martel, and Charlemagne. They established various diplomatic relations with Rome, Constantinople, and a lot of fellow Christian lands. Eventually, Charlemagne took over and established power. This is the Merovingian flag banner, and this is the Carolingian. So, coming to power, Charlemagne inherited the empire after the death of his father Pepin III, or Pepin the Short. It was originally split by him and his brother Carloman, but Carloman unfortunately died in 771 Common Era, where Charlemagne finally stepped up to receive the power. He was coronated in 800 Common Era on Christmas, actually, and focused his kingship on Christianizing all Germanic people, really, which included Franks, Saxons, Ostrogoths, Visigoths, Anglo-Saxons, etc., etc. But multiple rulers followed suit with this. Just like to point out, this map's in French, but this basically means land of Charles the Great, who is Charlemagne. That's just the French way of saying it, Charles or Chav. A little bit about him before we get into the juicy part. Early years, he was son of Bertrada of Laon. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And Pepin the Short. Little was known about his upbringing, but he was believed to be born in the northern German, Belgian area. He did have a knack for languages, which could give clues to his childhood. He spoke Latin and understood Greek among other languages. He was very good with that, very good linguist. He was heavily a Christian ruler, and he sought to unite Germanic people religiously. He had quite a number of children, around 18, with multiple wives, but he was, despite the violent nature, he was a devout father and encouraged education of all of his children. Ironically, even though his father was short, he stood relatively tall, with the broad shoulders and chest, but he did have a pot belly, good old pot belly, and a fat and short neck, and here's a picture of him right here. Wars in time of ruling, there were the Saxon Wars. Those were the main wars that were going on. The Saxons are a people that spoke the Teutonic language. They rested in the western central part of Europe and on the British Isles. They were primarily pagan, so that was a problem with Charlemagne. It took 18 campaigns and 30 years of fighting that was primarily focused on converting the pagans to Catholics, and it was primarily in northern German territories right around here. When, of course, Charlemagne had won. So we have right here a new map. This was the lands. These were the lands inherited by Charlemagne. Defense marches, just basically defense that they put up. And then this, all this green right here, was what was conquered by Charlemagne. And these lands that were dependent on the Carolingian Empire. Death, legacy, and heirs. So he was in relatively good health until a few final years of his life, about 4 years before he died. He did acquire a limp, often had fevers, and only boiled meat story. So basically, his doctors told him that he could not eat cooked out over a fire meat. He should only eat boiled meat, but he did not listen to his doctors whatsoever. Instead, he listened to his counsel and what he believed should be done to him. He died January 22nd on 814 Common Era, and this was the end of his reign for 4 decades. His son, Louis the Pious, took over as emperor. Charlemagne did various things. He expanded the Carolingian kingdom. He spread Christianity and ecclesial values, which basically means values of the Christian church. He inspired the first Renaissance of Europe, which we will get into. He held good relations with fellow Christians and diplomacy. And he was the sponsor of medieval education. And, of course, he had plenty of children to fulfill his bloodline. And there is where he's supposedly buried. Carolingian Renaissance. It was the first of the 3 Renaissances of the medieval ages, and it was the supposed renewal of Western culture. It focused a lot on ecclesial learning, which is the learning of Christianity, really in general, learning of Christian scriptures. He pushed the learning of Latin and various languages that was related to the Christian church, and he pushed the conversion of non-Christians as well. This is a quote by him: "In each bishopric, in each monastery, let the psalms, the notes, the chant, calculation, and grammar be taught, and carefully corrected books be available." This was in the capitulary of 789 Common Era. Fall of the empire. Primary weakness, like every good empire, was its size. There were disputes between land, which led to the miscommunication and sloppy leadership after the death of Charlemagne, of course, because Charlemagne would never let this happen. This was not a good time to be having that, because there started the Viking invasions of Europe in late 814 Common Era, which in the end, ineffective leadership, coupled with the size of the empire and outside invasions, led to the collapse of it. It was a major, however, in the end, it was a major identifier for the face of Western Europe, and short-lived, like ancient Greece, it was short-lived, but well-lived. It lasted from 800 Common Era to 888 Common Era. Rest in peace, Carolingian Empire. Citations. Images.